Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Public Access America AM Sunday Edition. This is March 28th, 2021. Oh, my name is Jason, and the feed has started. There you go. Hey, tip for all those that want to live stream, go ahead and mute the video when it pops up, and that'll make it a lot easier for you to navigate. That was actually one of my first mistakes. Adam Gonzalez from Adam Has a Beard and I interviewed a band called Boy Meets World from Ohio. You can find that on Jar Codes on YouTube, by the way. And like literally 2 minutes into the hangout, we started to get feedback, and I could not figure out what it was. And I had like five tabs open, and it was the video from YouTube streaming back into me. So it was weird. It took a minute to figure out, but now I'm passing that information on to you. All right. I'm going to start the recording before Jeffrey gets here because we got some house cleaning information to do, and I'd just rather get that on the record for the podcast. So bear with me a minute while I hit the button. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Public Access America. My name is Jason. We're waiting for Jeffrey, and I just wanted to start early before he got here for some house cleaning notes. We, as a podcast, Public Access America, we're moving. We're not going to be on SoundCloud anymore. That's kind of exciting. St- uh, we have plenty of time, by the way. December 6th, we will officially no longer be on SoundCloud. We're moving to Red Circle. For all you podcasters on SoundCloud, Red Circle is free. You can upload everything you want. You can move. You can import all of your past episodes just in an easy thing. I mean, it takes a little while. I think it took me about half an hour to upload all of my episodes, but we have, I think we're on 599 episodes. So I just want to say, and once you reach certain thresholds, your other features become available to you, monetary features, which is exciting. You can ask for donations, you can post exclusive content for that, you can monetize, you can get ad revenue, and you can get speaking ads, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. So Red Circle, go try that out. If SoundCloud has been disrespecting you as a podcaster and showing you no attention and creating no features for you, maybe you want to try Red Circle. Uh Public Access America is now on Amazon Music and Audible, by the way. And yeah, our feed is up on Red Circle. It's redirected that way, just to let you know. So we are officially on Red Circle. Thank you, Red Circle. And thank you, Shy from Inspirations Beyond Disabilities and Random Chatter, as well as Unsubscribed, for suggesting the new platform. It's exciting, and I'm excited to do that. But just don't forget, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Radio Public, Amazon Music. That's so cool. Google Play, Player FM, TuneIn Radio, and the Stitcher Smart Radio app. And the Red Circle does nothing to change that. Nothing to change that at all. So we're excited about that. You can find our live streams on YouTube at Public Access America. We do this every Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And I was just thinking how jealous I am of Jeffrey because he gets to do this while drinking his coffee, while I'm about an hour past my coffee and I'm onto water now. So, little jealousy there. We're going to discuss a couple things. Jeffrey got his shot, so we're going to ask him how that went, his first dose. Kind of exciting, and we'll probably ramble on about that for a while. Um, we- hey, there's Jeffrey now, so that makes it so exciting. And the weirdest thing is like Jeffrey jumps in, and we're streaming and recording already, and he just jumps in and he's like, "Hey, boom, on the fly." You don't even know what I'm talking about, but I've been talking for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I bet I can catch up real quick.
Real quick, real quick. We were just talking about you. You know what I mean?
Oh, hey, well, that's a interesting subject.
Right. No, I didn't even mention that your ancestor was what? Was he Secretary of State or Attorney General under Abraham Lincoln?
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, one of my favorite offices, by the way.
Mm. Yeah, and it's funny because like in looking at the way that I am, yeah, he was known for a fiery temper. I wouldn't say that I have a fiery temper, but
Right.
it was very much that he just did not put up with bullshit. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, that's me. That's me.
I agree. I agree. I have a hard time because I don't really recognize bullshit as like conversation. So generally I ignore it or move past it so fast that I don't recognize it for further discussions, you know?
Right, right.
So
It's-
congratulations on you getting your first shot.
yeah.
I'm
It's
so
been
excited. Are you
yeah.
having issues with your penis too?
Holy cow. I mean, it's like down to my knees
I
now.
know. I don't even have pants that fit this. I have to wear my Dockers.
It's like my forearm now. It's like
Right?
ah.
That's crazy. I'm really glad you got it. And now, so now Devi's gotten it, Emily's gotten it, you've gotten it.
Yep.
That's
So
so cool.
now we're just waiting on dose number 2,
Yeah.
which
And the kids, now they're doing studies for kids, which is pretty cool to me.
well they've been doing studies for kids since December and January.
Okay.
The first round of data is not, I don't think is supposed to be available until about mid-April. So, and when I say studies on kids, they're looking at like 12 to 18, about
Right,
that
right.
range. I believe that they're just now going to start studies down to 6 months.
Wow.
So, and of course, my favorite thing has been that, when you see that in Facebook news, you see a bunch of angry reactions, and I'm like, the funny thing is that the people that are angry reacting are the same people who are going to tell you not to get in the way of how they want to raise their kids.
Right. Of course. Of
you
course.
know, everybody wants to be involved in your life, but nobody wants you to be involved in their life when you don't know each other. So,
That's a big thing these days. That's a real big thing for me is I never understood why you can't ignore somebody if you don't like the way they live, you know what I mean? And I got in a lot of trouble because I felt the same way. A racist sitting in his house by himself watching racist TV with racist flags on his walls, but never doing anything with that racism except keeping it self contained, has the right to live that way. It happens when he decides to take action and hurt another person. And then that becomes something we need to address. But if you want to live your lifestyle and you're not harming anybody by living that way except yourself, you have the freedom to do that.
was it and that's where it's racism versus hate is a weird it's a
Yes.
weird Venn diagram where they overlap very significantly, but
Yeah.
the difference, yeah, I think Ice T said it best. The difference, when it comes to hate will have you killed and not say a word.
Yep. I like
And
that.
that's when you think about that just a little bit, you know, you expect racists to spout racist shit. They're going to say it out loud, but a lot of them won't do anything other
Right.
than just say a bunch of racist shit.
And I'm going to say 95% of people that are racist are asking genuine questions. It's just it's just certain people have heard those things thousands of times and now they're just irritated by the question and taking it out on the questioner, you know what I mean?
Right. But somebody who hates, uh
Yes.
like that is dangerous because when you think about what hate looks like, hate is, we've seen it, played out thousands of times in
Yeah.
lynchings, in uh, people just being shot simply because they are a certain color.
Mhm.
It's and like Ice said, you know, racists will talk a big fucking game and not do anything. People who truly have hate in their heart, they won't say a word.
Yeah. No.
And that's where it gets tough because you can identify a racist
Yeah.
by what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're wearing, what they're watching. But hate is a harder one to identify because when yeah, some of them probably have some of that stuff on display, but what about the ones that don't?
Right. I no, I totally get it. And it
Like,
I just there's so many tangents to go on with that.
oh,
But,
it's
but
it's it's crazy, and I would say that that's probably where we should leave it
yeah.
because there are people that are far more qualified to talk about that than I am.
That's
People that
true.
have people that are far more experienced in either dealing with it or having lived through it than I am.
Yeah. We had a conversation on Denton County Collective a couple weeks ago that kind of shook me because I asked a natural question and it made them nervous to talk about. They didn't want to be on the record having that conversation. And then it made me question the conversations I'm having. Am I insulting somebody by asking a question that is ignorant? Like it is ignorant, but ignorance is not knowing, stupidity is not wanting to know. And so I asked, is Judaism a religion or a race? And man, I don't know if they like that.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and that's, when you think about it, like I know black Jews, I know
Hmm.
Asian Jews, I know
Sure.
white Jews, and I would, it's really a tough question in that, um, knowing that anybody can be Jewish,
Hmm.
but we have this very large looming answer of Jews being systemically persecuted by
Yeah.
various governments in history
As a race.
as a race.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, even for example, if you do a DNA kit like 23andMe, they can figure out if you're Ashkenazi Jew,
Right.
So the answer is yes,
Both.
from potentially,
Okay.
and I think that would that's a very up in the air question because once again, having
Yeah.
grown up Christian, I'm only as familiar with the New Testament as we dig
Yeah.
into in as we dug into in Catholicism.
But yeah.
But
Well,
but
the question was, can you be half Jewish? And I said no, because you can't be half religious and you can't be half race. You can be mixed race, but you're still Jewish. If you're Jewish, you're Jewish, right? Like I'm part Italian, which means I'm part Italian. You know what I mean?
but and
That's
that's
where the question came from.
and I would say that can you be half Jewish? Yes. If you look at it from the DNA perspective of how they're trying to figure out if you're Ashkenazi Jew,
Okay.
I would say that if that is truly a thing that you can track in DNA, then I'd say the answer is yes, you
I
could.
love it. See, there's answers.
Um,
And if there's somebody out there that knows more, then yeah, please let me know, you know.
and but at the end of the day is what is the question that we are really truly looking to answer is it persecution based on race or is it persecution based on religion? And either have zero tolerance or should have zero tolerance, but here we
Yeah.
are. you know
Religion is based on not fitting in with the other. You know what I mean?
mhm.
I'm not going to go as far as hate. I think they're taught love, but I think they're taught absolution comes if they hate.
I think that just depends on whatever sect of whatever religion you're in.
That's
I
true.
mean, I think that's the reality is that I there were some sects of Christianity where there were people that were willing to go die, fight and die in the name of Christ, but then you had other sects of Christianity where it was very much about peace, actually walking in Jesus's footsteps, like
Yeah.
quite literally doing the same actions. I mean, you wouldn't perform the miracles necessarily, but the idea was you go out and you serve the hungry, the poor,
Yeah. The huddled
the people,
masses yearning to be free.
like actually doing the things that Jesus had done.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see that in every religion. I mean, you have I mean, you can do your own study on Israel, you can do your own study on Muslims and Islam, and how you
Hmm.
have some that are willing to fight and die in the name of jihad, and everything is jihad, versus some of the Muslims that I've been lucky enough to meet in my time in school, and they're just peaceful people. I think
Most
it
most
just
people are.
and that's exactly it, and I think that's like everything else in today's world, the violence, the hatred, the anger is amplified because it sells eyeballs.
because money comes from it. Yeah. And you know, I want to say like there was this commercial on MSNBC that I hated, and it was this morning guy, and he was like, "We don't treat domestic terror the same way we treat Islamic terrorists." And I just tweeted just a simple tweet, and I was like, "I can't be the only one offended by your Islamic terrorist commercial since Islam is a religion and not an ideal." And I haven't seen the commercial since. So, yay, you know what I
but
mean?
that's that's exactly it.
And that's the left
Right.
making a state. It's a guy that was formerly on the right, on the left, making that statement. So people sit there and they say that the Democrats are so pious and so righteous, but they make those mistakes too, you
And
know?
that's just it, is that, the left is far more willing to just like quietly take it down, sweep it under the rug, and hope nobody caught it and brings it back
Right.
up.
Yeah.
Whereas the right sometimes will just unabashedly go for it and just keep sending it. And it's like, yikes, man.
Yeah. I go from being like scared of the right to like totally just infuriated with it, you know?
That's my struggle with the right too, is that the I can just be absolutely pissed at them, and then at the same time just go,
Yeah.
man, some of y'all really need to open a book or something,
Yeah.
you know sit down and actually talk with someone. But what really, and this is where I get really frustrated. The right, they're an open book when it comes to the stupid shit that they're going to pull. Don't
Yeah.
like it, and I think it's awful. But the left will be like, oh no, we're totally going to do this, and this is great. And I mean,
Yeah.
you're seeing it play out right now. Think about 6 months ago, we were screaming angry kids in cages, and now it's
Yeah.
like children in overflow facilities. Like this
Yeah.
has been, it's like that SNL skit. Gussy it up however you want, Trebek.
That's right. That's right. And just on a quick note, 127 million people received their stimulus checks while 30 million did not because the head of the Social Security Department didn't release that information to the IRS so that disabled and seniors could get their checks. And I'm not hearing any calls from the left for this guy to be taken out. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
he affected 30 million people that need their money more than most, and nobody's calling for that, and that's on the left as well. So I don't support Joe Biden. I just
Right.
I'm never going to support the alternative, which is a racist privileged douchebag that steals his supporters money. I'm going to support the non-racist douchebag privileged
I
guy
mean,
that's stealing my money. You know what I mean?
and I mean, and the reality of this is that both of them were shit picks. Like
Yeah.
the way that I'm looking at this, I'm like, this has to be like after Brezhnev died in Soviet Russia, and then you just had a bunch of morons for very short periods of time that were old, and you're
Yeah.
like, oof, and then you end up with a Gorbachev, which I'm like, what are we going to end up with? Because
Yeah.
who knows what this is going to look like,
Yeah. And
after Biden.
Tuesday, I had this thought. I wanted to ask you this question. How does it feel to know you're never going to get a candidate? You know what I mean? Like you're going to have to compromise for the rest of your life on the pick for president of the United States because neither side is even close to where you are.
Well, the answer to that is it's frustrating because I think what you're seeing play out right now, you're going to continue to see play out
Yeah.
in the next elections to come. You're going to have one party get booted out, the other party get voted in. They're going to spend the first year undoing everything that the previous party did. And then they're going to, force through a bunch of crap that's half thought out, half baked at best.
Right.
And then when people are pissed off that that didn't work and they vote the other party back in, you're going to see a year of people undoing what the previous administration did, and then ramming a bunch of shit down your throat. and
Hmm.
and that's the pendulum we're going to be in for a while, until people decide to stop believing in this binary of Republican or Democrat. That's why I hope the GOP gets torn apart. It's why I hope
Yeah.
the Democratic Party gets torn apart, because the reality is that I think you've got progressives, I think you've got Democrats, I think you've got centrists, I think you've got Republicans, I think you've got whatever the fuck the Tea Party is, and they're kind of in this weird continuum that goes something like this. Then you have the libertarians, which are down more towards the individualistic side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got people who tend to be more socialist and they're more on the authoritarian side of things. And it's when you look at the quadrants, it makes a lot more sense. And what really frustrates me and other libertarians is that you've got people who think that the Tea Party is what some of us would consider libertarian. They're I would say they're more far right authoritarian, whereas I would not peg them as a libertarian of any sort.
I
But
never have.
everybody, but that's what people think of when they think of a libertarian, is they think of Tea Party, and that's not it,
Mm-mm.
because the Tea Party wanted Trump to be King Daddy Trump for eternity,
Yeah,
and that's not what a libertarian is. I don't like the idea of any guy being in power for very long, because it just ends up corrupting. You end up seeing people do things that should make you go, ooh. You see people
yeah,
end up passing laws that make you go, ooh.
that's
And the
right.
reality is that while everybody is so excited that Joe Biden is president and all these things are going to change, the reality is that the way that it's going to look is Biden's going to pass a bunch of laws. They are going to be ultimately, unequivocally, unequally enforced upon minorities. Because why? That's exactly what happens in this country, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah,
Gun control laws, when you look at what the modern gun control laws look like, they come out of the fact that people were terrified of the Black Panthers having guns.
that's right.
And so, what do you see play out constantly in the media all the time? White man kills a bunch of people, he gets to get arrested and sit in a jail cell. Black man doesn't kill anybody,
That's
gunned
right.
down in the streets. Why? Because he might have had a gun.
Yeah. The same day,
Turns out he's got a cell phone or a Nerf gun or nothing at fucking all.
the same day that the Boulder, Colorado shooting happened, a young boy, 6 years old, um, was arrested for disorderly conduct for picking a tulip for his
Mm.
mom in somebody's yard. He sat in court with a coloring book while his attorney defended him. That's crazy to me. This little black boy got thrown in
Mhm.
jail. Just today, or in Georgia, this lady, she got arrested, 2 felonies for knocking on a door in a building she works at.
Yep.
So yes, the laws might be created by federal Democrats, but the laws are institutionalized by local Republicans. And so if you create a law for domestic terrorists, suddenly you're defining the black community in a different way once there's a new administration.
Exactly. And that's what people are not going to sit down and listen to.
Right.
Antifa will be designated as a bunch of terrorists, and they're going to try and come after their guns.
Right.
Meanwhile, the people on the right who, literally kicked in the fucking doors at the Capitol,
Mm-hmm.
well, there were very fine people on both sides.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid. It is, if there is any question about the way that things are unequivocally handled in this country, January 6th should have answered a lot of questions for you. It
Of
really should
course.
have.
Yeah.
And if you fail to see that, well, that's on you, because it wasn't all that long ago that they were putting up barriers around the White House because a bunch of black people were pissed that they were being treated as less than equal.
That's right.
They had the National Guard standing on steps, fully armed.
Mm-hmm. It was gross. It was gross.
January 6th, we got a few cops and we couldn't get anybody else. And that
Right.
that should tell you all that you need to know, because I guarantee you, had any of those militias showed up really truly armed to the teeth, a couple of dead cops would have been the least of your worries.
Yeah. I, I it's a touchy subject. I believe in equal rights, and I believe racism exists and it should be stamped out. And I really, really, really wish that it was so that we could move on to the other groups. Like I keep hearing this phrase, this disproportionately affects black and brown Americans. This disproportionately affects black and brown voters. And I wanted to say, I said it on Twitter, is that yes, it also disproportionately affects the disabled, the homeless, the poor, the frontline worker, and others as well, not instead of. And we need to get to that point where we realize, where the BLM movement realizes that disabled people are also being treated like shit and lend their voice to that. That the Women's March realizes that LGBTQ rights are being stamped on as well, and lends their voice to that. And I'm so tired of these camps shouting their slogans in the air, and it goes nowhere because the camp right next to them can't lend their voice to them, or it discredits them in some way. There's disabled people in all those groups. Lend your voice to it. And there's race in all the disabled people. Lend your voice to that. We have to start coming together like that. We can't just stay divided and fight. When BLM fights, everything becomes related in these perspective of race. And you're seeing race where it isn't, and you're seeing race where it is, but you're also not seeing the inequalities that are going on right next to you. And it really bugs me. And I struggle with this because I feel slightly racist, because I'm a white guy saying, hey, BLM, share the spotlight, when I know for 400 years they've been waiting for the spotlight, you know?
Well, I mean that's the and I think that's the frustration in all of this is that you know really the fight for equality is everybody's fight,
Yeah.
and I think and that's the tough part is that everybody who has suffered under some form of oppression, you know, wants their turn in the spotlight, and the reality is that the things that you know Black Lives Matter fought for versus some of their primary issue versus I would say people with disabilities is that the largest difference is that you're not getting gunned down for carrying a walking stick or sitting in a wheelchair,
No,
whereas you've
we're
got
just picked on individually with hate
exactly.
crimes.
And that's just it is that there's a real disconnect there when
Hmm.
the reality needs to be that there needs to be one fight for equality,
That's right. Containing
all of
representatives
those.
from all of those. And if you don't have a representative, look, the spotlight is just your turn to be pandered on. It doesn't mean Joe Biden is going to make radical moves towards racial equality. It just means in every statement that any left makes, from media to politician, it has to include the word disproportionately affects black and brown people. But there's no teeth behind that statement. It's just your turn to be pandered on. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's the same thing. There's never going to be action for disabled people, because at the human level, people want to look down on people, and race is an easy way to do that. Sexual orientation is an easy way to do that, to judge you and look down on you. Disability, the same thing. People naturally want to feel superior, and the easiest way they do that in America is looking down on others instead of building others up and feeling proud about that.
Hmm. Which is really annoying and really frustrating in that it's the only difference between you know high school and now is that in high school you got picked on, and it didn't have necessarily any financial ramifications or anything
Right.
like that. But now you get picked on, and it's you might not get a job, or you might not get a house, or you might not be able to you know walk down the street wearing a hoodie without getting gunned down.
Right. Or
you
just
know
picked on for your social media. Like, employers look at your social media now, and they can let you go. They can fire you for your social media. I'm seeing it happen all the time.
and that's the trouble with social media, though, is that I've struggled with this one personally because you know as someone who looks at the Constitution, the answer to free speech is that no, the government cannot censor you, and that's really the extent of it. Is the government cannot
Right.
censor you. But that does not mean that, if you have an opinion, your employer is going to side with you on it, or even think that you should continue to be employed because of your opinion. And this is where, we all, you have to ask yourself, in the days prior to social media, was anything like this really truly an issue? And the answer is yes. It's just that now it's more amplified. Why? Because you can take a story and suddenly have it get millions of views to
Yeah.
find out, hey, this person was fired because they said Antifa, and their boss, thinks Antifa is a terrorist organization.
Right.
Or this person got fired because they supported the previous administration, and that person happened to think that the previous administration was racist. And that is going to be a struggle in the social media world, which is where I say, social media has evolved away from what it was when we were kids and started using it, where
Hell
we were just
yeah.
sending stupid pictures of ourselves to our friends
Yeah.
and poke wars, and you know it's not what it once was.
Yeah.
It
No.
was fun, it was crazy, it was goofy, and now it's just anger and vitriol and he said she said, and
Mm,
constant screaming into your own sounding board and deleting
yeah.
everybody who's not in your sounding board.
Yeah. Yeah, I had
And
there was an Instagram and this guy was responding to a Trump supporter. And I told him, you're just giving him the attention he wants. And then I commented again, wait a minute, are you responding because you're trying to get attention? And then I left another comment saying, wait, is that what I'm doing now? And the guy literally went on this rant. Are you telling me you support? And I was like, what? And then so I deleted the comment because it was supposed to be a joke, you know what I mean? But then he
right,
came back and he's like, I reread your comment. I'm really sorry. I misunderstood that because there was about 40 comments going on and I was responding to a bunch of them. But yes, I agree with you.
right, and that's what's so crazy about all of this is that social media, what used to be just our circle of friends is has become this weird attempt to become Facebook famous or TikTok
Yeah,
famous or
yeah,
YouTube famous or Twitter famous. And it's not actually, like we talk about, it's not actually about offering solutions. It's about amplifying problems
that's right. And
and
responding to criticisms
angrily.
angrily.
So that way the next person responds angrily. You
Yep.
know, it, that's not helping anything.
Or
And
crying, "Oh, I got picked on because I made a video." Yes, you got picked on for your nipples sticking out because your nipples were sticking out and men are looking at your nipples. They're looking at every woman's video's nipples. It's disgusting. Men are pigs. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's kind of like people don't watch NASCAR because they're thinking, "Oh, this is a great fine day to watch cars go in circles."
Right?
They're waiting for a fucking accident.
Hell yeah. My first NASCAR race I watched, Dale Earnhardt Jr. died. And then Dale Earnhardt
Or
died. And then the next one, nobody died. And I was like, this is a letdown. I don't like this.
and that's just it. Is that and that's what social media has become. We're just waiting to interact with or burn the next person that's going to say
Right.
something stupid.
Right.
And the worst part is that the spin has gotten so good that you could burn somebody and the opposite side is going to say, watch this person have an angry meltdown and get owned by, and it's like,
Yep. Because that's their goal, Jeffrey. That's their goal. The trolls, they just want you to react. That's the win for them. That's the win. It doesn't matter what you say. It's just that you're saying it to them. And the left is the same way. We go, God, you're stupid. There's a TikTok where this guy's like, how stupid does the left think we are? And honestly, there's hundreds of duets with it, with people going, pretty stupid. And that's not the way to work. That's not the way to do this. That's not that's not the way to do this, you know?
it's like watching two mules just sit there and bray at each other, and they're just trying to be louder than each other,
Yep.
and somehow people think that being louder is equal to being correct, and that's
Yep. Yeah.
no, no, that's never been how it is.
Mm, like
Which is
I
why which is why people get really frustrated arguing with me, is because I'll be sitting there and I'll be railing against somebody on the right, and they're like, haha, yeah, that's right, you show them. And
Right.
I'm gonna be like, oh, I haven't even started on you yet. You sit your ass down because it's your turn next.
That's right. That's right. There was this radio DJ in Chicago, and he said, "You love me or you hate me. You're following me. You're supporting me. It's those people that just ignore me that I can't stand because I get nothing back from them." So I
Exactly.
learned at an early age, I'm not going to pay attention to you if you're not worthwhile. You know?
And that's just it, is that it really doesn't take a whole hell of a lot for people to realize I'm just going to step into something and there's not going to be any sort of resolution here.
Right.
Because most, you've got two, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, you've got a couple different types of people when it comes to these straight interactions. You've got the people who are going in looking for a fight, and you got the people who are going in looking for an education.
Right.
And on the opposite side, you have people going in looking for a fight, and you have people going in looking to educate. And
Right. Yep. That's
and
true.
that crisscross of how you're going to intersect is a mess, because while you might be trying to educate somebody, when you're trying to educate somebody who's just looking for a fight, you're not actually going to teach them anything. And if you've got somebody who's looking for an education and you're just looking to fight with somebody, you're just going to get them to shut down and think that your point is stupid, because
And no.
you're just looking to argue and fight. That doesn't make
Right.
any sense.
That's the weird thing is somebody speaks out of turn and irrationally about the point they're trying to make, they're shut down and criticized, and their points are immediately null and void and not valid anymore. And
Right.
I'm going to say 74 million people voted for Trump because they see something's wrong, and that needs to be addressed. Whether it's right or wrong, I my first wife, I used to tell my mother-in-law all the time, look, feelings are real. That's what you need to address. You can't dismiss it because you don't feel like dealing with it. She might
Right.
be irrational, she might be wrong, but that's the starting point. That's not the finishing point. And we need to get past that with everybody in this America. Look, 74 million people, they feel a variety of different ways about the direction the country is going in, and we need to address that and find out how we can incorporate that to sand off the rough edges, you know?
And that's just it, is that people stopped looking to listen, and people stopped looking to learn,
Yeah.
looking to teach,
Right.
because everybody is pissed off that they've had to repeat the same thing over and over again. And I get it. But when it comes to teaching people, you have to look back at the system we're brought up in.
Yeah.
How much of your schooling is just people repeating stuff, the same thing over and over again, because you're teaching different people?
Right.
Or you're having to explain it again to somebody who just didn't quite get it. And that's cool too. And I get the frustration and the aggravation and the exhaustion of having to constantly teach people the same thing, the same point over and over
Right.
again,
It
not be a
becomes
shitty human being to other people.
more obvious to you, but to this person you're teaching, it's always a revelation and exciting. I had this thought that American history taught in school was written by the winners, but America's history is written by the losers, you know?
Right.
And I think that's a profound statement to make. I'm not quite sure. I just don't agree with the education system as it is right now, but that is a giant topic that we should just have a
Well,
conversation
and
about,
that's
you know?
exactly, and but that's world history in general. Well,
Yeah,
history is written by the winners, but the history of something is well written by the losers.
right. It's felt by the loser, written by the winners, felt by the losers.
Exactly. And I guarantee you can go back to Rome and see the same issues crop up,
Of course.
you know, 2000 years ago. That's not surprising.
Yeah, that just means the system that we've been basing our beliefs on, this democracy, has valid aspects to it, but doesn't mean that it's completely uncorruptible. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, every governmental type is corruptible. I
Mhm.
mean, you even look at this complete ideal utopia of communism where, the noble goal of everybody working together for a common good
Yep.
should be something that people go, that sounds very nice. And on paper, it reads very well. In practice, like everything else, it is entirely corruptible.
Do you
When you
know the
have
town? Do you know the town of Sunny?
the town of Sunny,
Sunny, what is it? Sunny, Belize, Belgium. No? Oh my gosh. It's right between Ukraine and the B country. Sunny was going to be this utopia of communism where they raised their own food, they were
hmm
self-sustainable, and all of this stuff, but then it was immediately evacuated in the first year and never brought back because of Chernobyl.
hmm
And so communism had this real neat sort of outlook going for it in Sunny. And I wish I could remember the name of that country. Man, I
Belarus.
Belarus, thank you. Yes, it's in Belarus and it was abandoned. And it didn't really have to be because the levels of radiation that landed there weren't all that high. And so, but it just, when you think of communism, you think of it in a certain way, breadlines and stuff. But the truth is they were working towards an ideal that I think I love the idea of a self-sustainable town that
hmm
has resources, and when it has an abundance of resources, shares with other towns in a variety of ways that,
hmm
so, and that's where it was going. I don't like communism as it stands right now, but I like the idea that it could be. And as an independent, I feel I can pick from the cherry tree, the orange tree, and the banana tree all at the same time. I don't have to say, I like the Republican agenda, even though I don't like 30% of it. I like a majority of it. No, that's not how I get to do it a different way. Like,
hmm
as a libertarian, at some point you're going to butt up against what's libertarian and
hmm
what, but as an independent, I get to pick and choose what I like about libertarians and what I like about progressives and what I like about communism and socialism and
Right. And really, even within the libertarian idea, being self-sufficient while being able to
mhm,
trade with others and keep the government out of it. Hey, great, I got a bunch of eggs or a bunch of lettuce or a bunch of tomatoes.
yeah,
You know, I should be able to go to my neighbor and say, "Hey, I got a bunch of leftovers. You want to trade some stuff?"
you should. I've lived on a dead
And
end. The
and and
six
not have
houses
to
down.
and not have to worry about the government being like, "Hey, do I get my cut of that?"
Right,
And
because
the
you know
answer
the
is
tax the
no.
tax the tax man's coming in going, oh, you got to pay for those seeds. You got to pay for everything else. You got to pay
And
for
that's where
everything,
like and that's where, I feel like the barter system as a libertarian, the barter system has a place within libertarianism in that,
Hell yeah.
there's the understanding that there are goods that I'm going to have to go out and buy because, the thing about money is that it made it easy for people to sit down and say, okay, a dollar, $2 is going to buy you a dozen eggs. $2 is going to buy you, a half gallon of milk. $2 is going to buy you. So that way you have this ability to have equal trade, and you don't have this issue of, okay, well, 12 eggs is worth, a dozen tomatoes to me on this guy, but it's only worth half a dozen tomatoes to this other guy. you know the issue there is that everybody has their own internal compass and internal calculations as to what their product is worth, depending on who they're interacting with. Money has made it so that way it's easier to sit down and say, your product is worth $2. $2 is worth, this or this or this or this. And it allows for, I would say more fair trade. But at the same time, too, that $2, as we're coming to find out now, especially in a place where you have sales tax, that $2 isn't worth $2.
Mm-mm. Nope.
$2 is worth $1.80.
Yep. But that's the thing. A libertarian and a progressive, a Democrat and a Republican, we all want progress. It's just the question is who's in charge of that progress. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep. And to me, whenever I see government involvement, most of the time you don't see the progress that you want to see. There are times when it definitely is necessary and incumbent upon the government to
Hmm.
create progress, but more often than not, you end up seeing how government creates inequalities and
Yep,
how it allows them to be enforced.
that's right. Everybody complaining about the systemic racism within our government, that's in our government. You know,
Right. And so that's where, that's where I get real frustrated as a libertarian, where I see people go, no, but if we pass these new laws and if we pass these new laws, and I'm like, you're arguing that the government is fundamentally racist, and your argument is that we should use the government that's fundamentally racist to pass new laws
hmm
and enforce them in a not racist way.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go back here again and let's repeat this. You're claiming the government is racist, you want a bunch of new laws, and you want the government that is inherently racist to enforce these new laws. I mean,
Please, please.
we're seeing this path here. You're not actually fixing the inherent racism in the government. You're allowing new avenues for it to continue down.
Yeah, because if you have 99% non-racists creating laws, you still got that 1% that's enacting the laws, you know what I mean?
Right,
And
exactly.
they get to see them how they want. And that is the Jim Crow Reconstruction era of you jaywalked, you're going to lose your voting rights. Oh, you jaywalked, you're going to get a slap on the wrist. You're going to jail for 40 years because you're black and you jaywalked. You're going to get a ticket because you're white and you jaywalked.
hmm and that's just it. And so that's where I struggle with, the whole next step of, like, for example, gun
Mhm.
control is always a really hot debate, and I love to talk about it.
Mm,
So here's what you got. You got a government that's fundamentally racist. Yep. Okay. So we're going to use that government to pass new gun control laws that are going to require background checks, right? Yep. Okay. So you have a government that is fundamentally racist, that is disproportionately arresting and charging young black men with charges that will cause them to lose their ability to buy a gun legally, right? Yep.
right.
Okay, so we're going to enforce these laws, these background checks, in a way that is going to prevent young black men from being able to buy guns, because we haven't fixed the root issue of the government is fundamentally racist in enforcing laws that create these charges
Mm,
against young black men, so that way they can't have these rights.
yeah.
Or my other personal favorite, the mental health question. Okay. So we think that when it comes to gun control, that we need to look at it from a mental health perspective. I do think that there's an avenue of mental health issues that needs to be explored. Personally, I think the CDC needs to study gun violence in the case of mental health,
Of course.
because as a scientist, you're saying that what you're going to study is that gun violence is a mental health issue, and as a scientist, you have to prove the null hypothesis. So gun crime a is because of mental health issues. And so when you study this, and if you come to find out that no, in fact, gun crime uh, is not because of mental health issues, that means that you don't have the mental health issue, it's a gun issue.
I see it just the opposite. I see,
Whereas if you do the tests and the study comes back and says yes, there's a direct correlation between mental health and gun violence, then it's a mental health issue that you have to address. So let's say that it's a mental health issue, just for argument's sake.
it has to be.
You would hope. You would hope.
You're putting a gun in the hand of something that will break down. Every human is going to eventually suffer mental deterioration, and you're putting a gun in the hand of something like that.
So here's where it gets fun. So if we say that it's a mental health issue, right? Right.
hmm
So you have a government that fundamentally has issues, right?
Totally.
You decide that you're going to pass you're deciding that you want background check laws, where you want people that are deemed to have sufficient mental health issues be registered,
hmm
but you oppose background checks. So if you do all of the studies and you determine that it's a mental health issue and that you decide that you need to look at people in terms of mental health and gun ownership, that means you have to have some type of registration for people with mental health issues in order to be able to catch them on a background check.
And
So
that's discriminatory.
even if you do manage to get that universal background check in, you now have this database of people that have mental health issues, or
That's right.
what 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 your government would deem as sufficient mental health issues.
Yeah, who
So then the
defines
question,
that?
and so who defines that? Exactly it, because according to some governors, they see LGBT as a mental health issue.
That's
So does
right.
that mean gay people shouldn't have guns? I do not think so. I think gay people should have more guns. I
And
believe
who's
the LG,
what, a treated mental disability is different than an untreated one. A bad
Mhm.
day is an untreated one. You know what I mean?
And so even if you were to get universal background checks in, you have opened this door of there are groups of people that are going to be disproportionately affected by these quote unquote mental health laws. If you live in a state where they think that being LGBTQ is a mental health issue, and they put it on their registration,
Hmm.
that means that people who are LGBTQ are never going to be able to own guns.
That's right. It's just a way to look down on other
So
people.
so while you might want this to pass and you might want this to catch the people who do have mental health issues, the reality is that I'm looking at how it's going to affect people that don't are not going to are not thinking about how it will affect them, because who's going to be unable to defend themselves?
Hmm.
If you live in a state where racism is very rampant, but now you have laws that are more universal in allowing black men to not have firearms because of
Hmm.
previous convictions, whether or not, the whole issue of whether, how people are continuously punished after they've served their sentence is a topic that we've kind of talked about a bit.
Oh yeah.
But the reality is that that continuation of that sentence long into their, into their 30s and 40s, and not
Rest
being
of
able
their
to get their
life.
not being able to have their rights restored,
Right.
that continuous punishment for whatever they did or didn't do as kids,
Hmm.
the laws that you seek to put in place are going to be used against people that you do not intend for them to be used against. I get that you want to catch a bunch of angry white people that are shooting up places. I
You're
get it.
gonna develop laws as a blanket across the country, and you're gonna have racists in Texas suddenly charging people with 72-hour mental holds to get that on their file so that they can't have a gun. So you're trying to make a law for the man in Montana teaching his kid, his 12-year-old, how to shoot with a long gun, and you're trying to fit that law as well into Miami, where people are killing people and 900 guns were confiscated at spring break. And
Hmm.
so you can't do that. The federal government's role is to blanket coverage the country, and it needs to fit every situation. And that's why it's supposed to be well thought out. If you're having an issue with guns in Chicago, Chicago and Illinois should deal with that in their way. And they might become a model for other large cities, but there's no reason why the way you enforce gun rights in Chicago and Illinois should make sense in Nebraska. You know what I mean? So I'm not in favor of federal stuff like that. Voting rights is a federal issue and should be handled by the federal government. There should be a baseline for that. But I
Hmm.
don't think the government should get involved in some of the stuff that states would do differently. And
Right.
honestly, I hate to say this, if you don't like the state you live in, you gotta move. Like you gotta move. I moved from Illinois to Florida. I fucking hate Florida, but I'm here because I think if I'm here and other people move here, maybe it'll get better. So if you're in Georgia, fucking move to Florida. Help me change Florida. It's got a coastline, you know?
And that's what's so crazy about this all is that, like, it's that whole the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The
Mm,
good intention is catching all of these people that are doing mass shootings.
Right.
And it's a noble goal. I truly do believe it. But it is going to impact other communities in such a way that you're not going to catch the people that you're wanting to catch. You're just going to make it harder for people who are otherwise law abiding citizens to be able to own guns.
Yeah.
And that's, the Republicans do a shit job of explaining that.
Yeah.
They do a terrible job. Oh, well, you're just trying to make it harder for. No, let me explain to you how this actually affects law abiding citizens. Because, like I said, if you think it's a mental health thing,
Mm-hmm.
and states are allowed to determine that LGBTQ is a mental health issue, what you have in effect done is made it so that way the LGBTQ community cannot arm and defend itself against people who would like to see them dead. I mean, how many black trans women were killed last year? Something on the order
23.
of, like, was it 23?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a second. If you and I mean, even just in the news that I was reading, you know, there were three people that were just, I think, convicted of beating a gay man to death.
Yep. In just Tallahassee, a trans man that was having a bad day got shot to death because he was having a bad day. But that's the thing. You want to enact laws. You can be as liberal as you want. You can be Bernie Sanders enacting a law. The truth is if you believe that there's systemic racism in the police system, in the criminal justice system, you do not want to give them that power because the law might
Putting the
be
cart before the horse.
the law might be used to protect a certain segment, but it will be eventually trickled down to racists using it. And if you believe that the police are disproportionately affecting black and brown communities through violence, which I do, you can't then give them another weapon in their arsenal to attack those people. You have
Yeah,
to think about you have to think about what you're offering in everybody's perspective. When you make a law, you have to say, how is this going to affect women? How's it going to affect men? How's it? And you have to go down the line, all the way down, and ask yourself, and then say, well, it disproportionately affects communists in this country, but that's a small minority. Like, you have to rationalize that stuff, you know what I mean? And
hmm,
you can't take your largest voting demographic blocks, women, black people, disabled people, uh, LGBT people, and you can't disenfranchise them because and expect to keep them, which is what the Democrats do. At least the Republicans say, we're never going to get you, because you don't see it our way. And
right.
I don't like the Republicans. I do not like what they're doing. I think it's
Yeah.
disgusting. But if California requires a state ID or a driver's license to vote or register for absentee vote, you can't say Georgia can't try that too. But I think Georgia has thrown 40 things out there into law because they know that the Democrats are going to fight those and they're going to get three. A judge might say, yeah, no, people can get water in lines. They can do this, but you can also keep your control over local election boards. And that's what's disgusting. They're overwhelming the system, hoping that something passes, like a drug dealer.
Yeah.
You got 40 tunnels. You're racing all your weed to the border. 10 trucks get caught, but 2 get through. That's what the Republican agenda is. And they are at war right now in America
Hmm.
because America is 59% white and they are so worried. They are fighting for that 9%. So we might think that they're stupid. I don't think they're stupid. I think they have an agenda and a platform and they're following it. And their agenda
Hmm.
is to take back America. And that everybody wants the vision of America that they want. Republicans want a white America. They want minorities to get everything they want while staying in their place. And that's an important thing to know. They don't see it as oppressing you. They see you trying to get out of your station, trying to get past where they think you should be in this world. And that goes for people of disabilities and people of color.
Hmm.
That's what's important to know. They're not naive. They're not stupid. They're not going, I just don't see it the same way. They're going, fuck you. I know what you're saying, and I'm going to keep doing what I want because this is a war for America. And in 10%, we're going to lose the majority. and that's it for America. It's over. White people will have no say. And that's just not true. It's not true.
And and that's the funny thing to watch. But the reality is I'm watching two dying parties fight over the last vestiges of power.
Yeah,
Because as a libertarian, all I want people to be able to make their own way in the way that they want to make their own way. You have the right to swing your fist as hard and as fast as you want, but your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins.
that's right.
And that's really what it boils down to is that you do you. It's fantastic. I think it's great. You know, I in fact am somebody who likes to celebrate the fact that, we have such diverse culture.
Yep.
You know, I think it's fantastic seeing people make their own way. And I like to support that.
Me too.
I don't want to change it because,
Mm-mm.
hey, and it's none of my business. You know,
That's right.
I think it's fantastic that we have the kind of rich diversity that we have. And I think it's great that they each get to find and make their own way.
That's you.
And I don't like the government getting involved in it inherently because, if you're going to say the government is racist, adding more controls to the government doesn't fix the racism problem.
Right, right. And when you don't care about who you're electing and you leave it up to the rest of the country to do it, that's going to happen. You're going to get more racists in there.
you know, which is why I think the libertarians and the progressives tend to get along. We just fight on the role of government. It's
Yeah.
like we like the end goal. I want communities of color to be able to grow and succeed and make their way.
I do too.
It's just the difference is that the progressives want to see the government get more involved in making that equality happen. And I think the best way to do that is to get government away from them because
Right.
government has systemically oppressed them.
Well, and it shouldn't be a race to who can spend more in the deficit, right? Like Donald
Exactly.
Trump spent 7 trillion, so we get to spend 7 trillion, and
Exactly.
we're going to help the people instead of corporations. But the corporations, guess what? They're still getting their permanent tax break while our taxes under the Trump tax break plan are going to go up every 2 years until 2027. But the corporate taxes, they're going to stay low. And nobody's adjusted that yet. Oh, it's
Mhm.
crazy what the Republicans did for their trickle down economics, but you're not stopping that with an executive order. You're not fighting for that in the Senate right now. You're fighting over voting rights, which I believe is important. But God damn it, it should be a non-issue. Like this was a 2013 regulation that the Supreme Court deemed outdated and needed review. The Supreme Court didn't say it was a bad idea and should be thrown out entirely. They said update this shit like everything else gets updated. My
Right.
software gets updated every 3 minutes, but we can't update our voter rights laws in the federal government every what 10 years. So
And that's just it and that's by design, and that's by design by both parties. I want to make that very
mhm,
clear.
yeah,
Because the issue right now between the two, between having two parties is not, it's not an issue of whether or not you're right, it's whether or not you have control.
mm,
And that's literally that's all they're fighting for is control. They're not fighting to show that, they are right. They're fighting for control. Both parties are playing not to lose at this point, and it's been very clear because playing to win and playing not to lose are two very different outcomes.
yeah, yeah. Trying to hold on to power and trying to use that power for good are two separate things too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm watching, and that's why I'm like, great. I want to
Yeah,
see the Republican Party split and break to hell. I want to see the Democratic Party split and break to hell.
yeah.
I personally would love to be able to work with progressives on certain issues
You
because
need to. It's like salt without pepper. It's like lemon without lime. And you need an opposing view in the room.
and that's just it is that as a libertarian, realistically, do I think that we're going to be able to get the government out of everything? No,
Mm-mm.
but I think that realistically, I can. work with progressives to get to the end goal and get government out of some things that it doesn't need to be involved in. I'm not stupid. I don't think that there needs to be zero government involved. I just
Right.
want to get it down to as little as possible because that means there's more money focused on the issue that we're trying to solve.
Wait, there's things that every American need, and that's what the
Absolutely.
government is there for. But there's things that people in Montana care about that people in Chicago don't, and that's where the government needs to stay out. I do want to say thank you for listening to Public Access America. You can find us on Amazon Music and Audible now, which is pretty exciting. And have a great day. All right, we're back. Sorry, that was the top of the hour thing, so I just had to.
Nice.
I have a question for you.
Let's hear it.
Welcome back to Public Access America. I want to start I want to start talking about this more and expanding on this idea because I think it's cool. And I struggled on which idea to go with. I have this great idea for immigration, but I want to start with this. So
Mhm.
I want to start Flatland, a new community. And I wanted to ask you, like, what is one thing that you would add to that community to make it a utopia, to make it an example of how other communities should be? But honestly, the whole discussion before any of that is where you would put your community. Are you getting what I'm saying? You understanding the concept here?
Kind of, sort of. I think I'm trying to figure out how you want to relate it to immigration.
Oh, I don't. Forget it.
Oh,
Immigration another time. I just have the people are coming to the border and we're
mhm.
we're we're making overflow buildings here. Make them on the other side. Build the people are sitting on the other side of the border. Build infrastructure there so that they can patiently wait because it
Mm.
is going to take time. Instead of bringing them into the country and then saying, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? They're in cages." Build infrastructure on the other side with Mexico so that they can live there, they can migrate to there, they can apply there, they can get something, education, housing, something there, because we're spending billions here to house them. We could be spending billions on the other side of the border creating infrastructure that will help for generations to come. But I like this idea of a new community.
Mm. All right. There's a lot to unpack here. I'm gonna
So
I'm gonna grab myself
yeah,
some lemonade, and I'm gonna talk to you about this while I
I
wander.
love it. I love it. Give it some thought.
So, what you have to think about in terms of immigration is
Oh,
what
okay.
are you actually looking at solving? Because again,
Nothing.
because what you're looking at is you're looking at a system in which you have a problem with people coming to the border. Okay. Now the question is it really a problem with people coming to the border and you're wanting them to stay on the other side of the border? Is it, or is the problem that they're even having to come to the border in the first place?
Yes, it's that. It's that. It's that they're coming to the border, but they're coming to the border. So how are we going to handle that? Because it's happening.
So
But but why they're coming to the border is the problem of why they are at our border right now,
so
in the masses that they're in.
so you've seen a couple of different ideologies play out. Both of them have sucked. Why? Because neither of these ideologies have fixed the root cause.
They don't want to fix the root cause because they want to spend the money on it so that they can filter that money into their own pockets in some way, shape, or form. The border wall was given people were given contracts for the border wall. Who got the kickback from the contracts? That's the question. It's not the border wall. Nobody fucking gave a fuck about the border wall. Donald Trump just knew he could siphon a lot of money from the border wall.
Exactly. If you want to stop the flow of immigration, you have to solve the issue as to why people are immigrating in the first place.
Of course, of course. And
And
that's why
that's
they're here now is because we took away the funding for the Northern Triangle.
and so what you end up having is you have this idea of, well, if we build a wall, it'll keep people out. That hasn't necessarily worked. When
Yeah,
you look at working migrant communities, what does that mean? People have come up, worked, gone back home. Now people come up, they work, and it's harder for them to either get back home, number one, or get back in, number two.
exactly.
So what have you done? You've now created a situation in which people feel that they have to stay.
That's
Okay.
right. I
So
hate that.
so
I
so
hate that.
that's what the border wall has done. All right. So now that we've done that, now that we've talked about that, now you've got this issue of what are we going to do with people who are coming into this country seeking asylum? Okay,
Help them.
but how do you help them?
You stop you oh, there's a
This is
fire.
this is exactly it.
They're
You,
running away from a fire in their country. Take them in, help them, and help fix their country. You know what I mean? Do what you can with diplomacy to fix their country. And if the country doesn't want to be fixed, well, guess what? You got a bunch of immigrants on your hands that are now productive members of America. But to say that it's this, you're either an immigrant, an illegal immigrant, or you're an American, that's ridiculous. I don't see the border as a hard
Mhm.
border. I see it as a neutral zone. If people if people are running to the finish line, Jeffrey, their goal is to get past it, right?
Right.
But if people are running to a place of safety, they can now be safe and consider their options. If they could apply on their way here and we could help them that way if there was an infrastructure there. I mean, I have this great idea, but you need to start building like towns and communities at the entrance to the border so that people have a safe place to wait. And that's what's killing me. It's they're either in
So
kids in cages here or refugees in Mexico, and they're dying eat both ways. They're dying of the
mhm,
same thing, diseases and abuse. And so
mhm.
how do we fix that? Why can't we make that all infrastructure that goes around along the border, and not in 5 minutes, but over the course of time? If we start it now, and if we build apartment buildings to house them and companies to employ them, and and school to educate them, and courts to bring them through safely on there and that side of the border with Mexico, it helps everybody. You know what I mean? And that's what I don't understand. That's where the cooperation between the two countries should be,
I think the
as well as fixing the origin countries.
I think because the fundamental issue there is that that burden gets placed on two countries
Mhm.
that it not, it shouldn't necessarily be their burden to fix, and
But
that's the
but
problem.
it's our burden right now. I mean, whether we do something or we ignore it, it's still
Hmm.
a situation.
I don't disagree, which is why you have to figure out what the fundamental issue is that's causing immigration from some of these Central American countries.
Yes.
And it has to be a coalition effort to fix the issue. And that's really the issue at hand is that it shouldn't be that the United States wants it fixed because we don't want people coming in. It shouldn't be that Mexico
No.
wants it fixed because they don't want people coming in. It should
Right.
be that the United States, Mexico, and whatever other countries in Latin America want it fixed. So that way there isn't this urge to flee persecution, but rather, it's different when you're going and looking for opportunity versus looking to escape, the hell that has been brought
Like I
on.
said, there's a fire hose in my neighbor's yard and it's flooding our yards, Jeffrey. What are we going to do about it? We could put sandbags up to make sure the water doesn't come in, or we could just go over there and fix the fire hose. Like go over to
Hmm.
our neighbors and say, "Hey, your hose, turn it off."
So
And
now,
that's the problem.
so now the question is how do you fix this fire hose? This
As
fire
well,
hose.
wait, as well as uh, containing the people affected by it.
So yes, you do have to, if we're going to use the fire hose analogy, you do have to have a way of funneling the water in such a way that it's not going to a cause damage or b
Mhm.
overwhelm something else.
Right.
I don't think that that's an issue for us in terms of immigration.
No.
But
We have entire empty states that could house people until their country is fixed.
but that's the issue at hand is that, how do you fix their country, quote unquote? What is it that they're actually leaving from? Is it because its job opportunities are few and far between? Is it because you have cartels that are running rampant, murdering people? Is
Mhm.
it because you have governments that are so corrupt that they can't manage to get anything under control because
Mhm.
the answer
Climate change,
climate
healthcare,
change,
all of these things.
you have to look at it holistically and you have to figure out what that solution is. The problem is that the problem there is that it takes a while for that to get fixed.
Yes.
And unless you start now stemming that issue, it's only going to get worse. So what you have to do is you have to figure out what you can put in there to help stabilize. And overwhelmingly, it's good paying jobs
That's right.
because people are lacking that opportunity. You're seeing that play out in the Middle East where countries are devolving into civil war because of a lack of good paying jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And if
So,
people really want to wonder if it takes people want to know why they come here and how bad could their country be? We're still here. And a lot of us hated the way the country was for the last 4 years, but we didn't leave. You know what I mean?
right,
It takes so much to leave your homeland to go somewhere where you know you're going to be persecuted, abused, and denied.
right,
There's this saying, oh, the bravest make the journey, the strongest survive. And why wouldn't we want those people in our country? You know what I mean? But what I think is that we need to start a cooperation. I've always said this in America, cooperation, that this hemisphere, this side of the earth,
hmm
and yes, we need to take care of each other. Canada needs to support us in helping these immigrants because it only
right.
benefits. But what we have right now is we're just letting people in without knowing their skills, without anything. We don't know anything about them. We're like, all right,
Or
go
or we're
on.
not letting them in, and then they are ending up dying in the desert or dying
Right.
on the other side of the border. The questions that we have to answer are how do we migrate away from a system that we're currently having problems with
Mm-hmm.
and form a system that's actually going to work better.
Yeah.
Because the issue at hand that some of the issue at hand is that we have fundamental problems with China, and those fundamental problems are not getting fixed.
Fucking China.
And what we either have to do is we either have to say, you know what, we're pulling our money, we're pulling our resources, and we're going to invest in our neighbors
That's
because
totally agreeable.
they're more aligned with our views. I mean, Biden said it himself earlier this week. President Xi doesn't have a democratic bone in his body.
No, nor should he. He's a communist. And he's not
You
even
know,
a communist. He's a communist nationalist. Like,
like
you know what I mean?
they're not even like anywhere close to what I would call a communist
Right.
or what any system would call communist. So
Mm.
you have so you have that issue of China is able to do what they're doing because they are benefiting enough of our money.
Right. Yes. I thought that this week that we are giving money to China so that they can oppress people. But they couldn't
Hmm
do that without our money, you know?
Yep.
Like Russia right now is building up well, the pipeline's 90% done to Germany. And Biden's like, we don't like, I think it was Blinken that was like, we don't like this pipeline because you're going to be giving money to Russia and Russia is going to continue to be an oppressive force in this world. Can you not do that? And Germany's like, it's like 90% done, dude. Like, what do you want us to do? You guys were assholes and we couldn't depend on you anymore. So we had to make our own way. We're making our own way. And now you got a new administration that's like, please don't do that. You can't tell Germany they can't survive. But I don't like the idea of them paying Russia for all of their gas. I don't like
Right.
that at all.
And that's just it. This is where what we need to do is, in a way, it's a new race that we have to have, and this new arms race is clean energy. Really,
It can be. Okay.
I think it should be.
It doesn't matter. It's just the point is to divert the money that's going to China to this hemisphere, to I don't know if I'm
Mhm.
using the word hemisphere right. So I'm always like,
Yeah, you are. I
okay.
mean, I mean that's to our, I believe they called it the Marshall Plan. Our sphere of influence was
Mhm.
this side of the world.
Yeah, I just think we
So
need to redirect the money and it can go to Canada, it can go to Alaska, it can go to Mexico, wherever wherever we can get wherever it fits. Build a sun-kissed plant in Guatemala. I don't care. You know what I mean?
right,
If it fits the scenario, do it because I think that's awesome. But create things in the right way. Like proper pay, union jobs, like insurance, like help the people get back on their
Right.
feet. You know what I mean?
And that's just it, is that unless we start creating those jobs over here, the
Hmm.
oppression that you see happening in China, like in the Uyghur community,
Oh my God.
I hate to
Hong
say
Kong,
it,
Taiwan.
we're funding it by our purchase of those goods.
Yeah.
And what you've seen is you've seen some nice lip service about how we're going to support, freedom and democracy and blah 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 blah. We aren't
Mhm.
doing shit about addressing the Uyghurs. It's
Or,
it's a
yeah.
very it's a very nice mouth moving game. It really is. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And just remember, everybody, I want you to know that that is what province? What province is that? But that's where Mulan was filmed, and
Hmm.
that's why people were boycotting Mulan. Not because it wasn't a great fucking movie, which I haven't seen, because it supports fucking oppression of the Uyghurs in China. Okay, so you gotta understand that Disney made a movie cheaply with communist China in the province where the Uyghurs are being oppressed. And that's why we don't watch Mulan. Not because it is a bad movie or because we don't like immigrants or the Chinese people. It's a great movie. It's a great concept. Mulan, the original, was one of my favorites, the cartoon, because I loved her female dominant presence. She was just so cool. So I have nothing against Mulan, but I don't like where the movie was filmed. So I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to give it my money.
Right. And that's just it. Is that but now you have China staring down the barrel of Taiwan. You saw the
Hmm.
largest incursion of Chinese forces in Taiwanese airspace. Japan has literally reinterpreted their constitution to say that they could defend allies, and it would be a method of defending themselves.
It
So
is.
Japan would be able to go to the defense of Taiwan.
Okay.
So,
Like what I learned was there was a war in China, and the one guy took over, and the other guy fled to Taiwan,
yep,
and created his oppressive government there. And the people in Taiwan were like, "This sucks, get out!" So Taiwan has been like just I mean, they've been treated like shit. People think this stuff in the past happened thousands of years ago, but you got to remember that even California was Mexico in 1850, and that was like 170 years ago. So it's like
yeah.
two generations that, we got to remember that stuff. And like,
And
yeah,
this is and the recent history of China and Taiwan really starts at about 1949.
right? Israel's only been around since then.
Since, yeah, what, 47, 48?
Right. And we think that's my problem with Israel, damn it. You took over a part of a country, you fought, and then you built your encampment there. But I mean, I just think that like the state of Israel is kind of like a fortress, like defending its area. But okay, I'm sorry. I digress. It's just all this stuff happens all around the world, and people think it's set in stone because it's history. But that's not true.
you know and the funny part is that, even with China, you have a bunch of countries surrounding China, around China, that are have huge problems with them. You've got Malaysia that's, starting to kick
Mhm.
Chinese fishing boats out of their waters. Singapore's had issues. Indonesia's had issues. South Korea is had issues.
Yeah,
Vietnam has huge issues. I mean, the country that we fought, against for 20 years is now friends with us because of China. That's
right.
the crazy part.
Right. North Korea could literally be shut down in a second by China.
Yep. I mean, that's where it's at.
Mm.
I mean, India and Pakistan, like the military leader of Pakistan just came out, what, maybe a week before, saying that, that Pakistan and India need to bury the hatchet.
Yeah, they do.
Because why? China has been a problem to both of them.
Yes.
Like,
China,
you have countries that have been fighting each other for 50 years saying, you know, I think we got a bigger problem on our hands. We need to put our shit away.
yes, because what China is doing all over the world is what we were doing, that people complained about, policing the world, building infrastructure in countries so that they could be stable and wouldn't affect us in a military way. But China came in Trump's absence of pulling back and said, "We'll build you a road." And so, yeah, places in Africa and in the Middle East said, "Yeah, we need a road. Thank you." And then China went, "Cool, here's your road. By the way, now you owe us for that road." And they've been doing that unabashedly because the United States isn't pushing back, you know.
Hmm.
And so China is trying to fill the void of our presence, but they're doing it in a mob sort of way. You know what I mean? Here you go. Here's your gift. By the way, now you owe me, you know?
Hmm. And that's going to continue. And
Hmm.
and the reality is that when you look at the fact that we're having to build new chip making plants in our country because of China,
Yep.
it shouldn't just be our country. We should be able to make chip plants, we should be able to have chip plants in Mexico or Guatemala or wherever. We
Wherever
should be
it's
able,
most convenient and the products are easiest to get to in this hemisphere. Yes.
and wherever you have a plentiful workforce, because that's
Yes.
really what the issue is going to be, is that there is a plentiful workforce. And if there's a
Hmm.
plentiful workforce and there is something that can be supplied, you're going to overpower these cartels, because
Yep.
people don't want to spend their lives working in fear that they're going to get shot.
No. And nobody wants to go out and shoot people on a daily basis. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And that's just it, is that when you look at what some of these places are doing, where they're legalizing marijuana, and it's now becoming harder for people to get some of these other drugs, because, well, they don't want the other drugs. You have a more stable economy, you'll have a more stable workforce, you'll have a more stable production or manufacturing, or whatever it is that we can do within the hemisphere to partner with our neighbors and create shorter supply lines that allow us to to make more goods in this area. Like, there is really no good reason why we shouldn't be working with Central and South America to get past some of these issues that have developed with China. I would rather invest in our neighbors and deal, hopefully get past some of the cartel issues that we currently have through legalization. Because what's going to happen to the cartels if you have this mass legalization like you're starting to see? The cartels aren't going to have the same kind of power that they have,
Right.
especially when you've got good paying jobs, as well as the illegal drug trade.
Sure, there's always going to be illegal trade, but without cooperation, it just runs rampant, you know?
But even then, with even if when you legalize all of this stuff, now you have a legal trade. And so these cartels aren't going to have the same power, because that money is, you're making money based off of the risk there. And if there's
Mhm.
no risk, it's not as profitable. So couple that couple that demand with the fact that you will have whatever new processing and manufacturing plants,
Right.
within the same hemisphere. You effectively stabilize an area, and
Yeah.
you then start to fix the whole quote unquote immigration issue. Like, I can appreciate, wanting to, build more buildings to house the overflow, but kind of like what we talked about, this more government involvement, when you
Mm.
don't fix the systemic problem, all you do is have it enforced against a group of people more than if you would have actually just fixed the problem. The problem is that, as you make drug trade legal, that takes the teeth away from cartels. As you
Mm.
invest in opportunities like chip making, like manufacturing, like any number of things, be it
Mhm.
from automobiles to green energy, though those opportunities make their economy stable.
Sure. I'm just thinking of the old West scenario though. Like build it because it's needed. You know what I mean? People are going to that spot. We should build something. You know what I mean? And once you get businesses once you have the people, a business will see that they have labor. And and so they'll move there, but then you need to police to protect the businesses. And so that's how the old West was formed. And I'm not saying people should stay there. I'm just saying that if you build it on that side, they will go there and be safe. And then they can apply. And then we can
Mhm.
find out more about them. What if we get a whole bunch of people from El Salvador that are fleeing because of hurricanes destroyed their farms. But now
Mhm.
we have a whole bunch of farmers here. We wouldn't know that. If we knew that,
Hmm.
then we could be like, hey, yay, we got a whole bunch of farms that need to be fixed.
Well,
And
and that's just it is that,
but it's a whole approach. It's not one thing or the other. It's both of those things I think that need to be done.
well, and you also have to change the perception too of, what legal immigration and what, migrant immigration looks like. The constant argument of they're coming here to take our jobs. Yeah, because, being a janitor for $8 an hour, mowing lawns in 110-degree heat, and, going out and working in ag fields. Yeah, you're totally taking those jobs. No, you're not,
No.
but they are. And they're not doing, the vast majority of them aren't doing it under the table. And the
No.
funny part is that there have been more Republicans and Republican donor companies that have been caught doing under the table
Yep.
deals with immigrants, quote unquote illegal immigrants, as they like to call them.
Right.
There have been more cases of that happening. Whereas if you have, legal migrant work, yeah, they're
Yes.
paying taxes here in this country. Guess what?
Yep.
That happens.
That happens. And the reason you hit it on the head in the first statement you made, the reason that they're here is because they can't commute. They can't commute from their country to this country. And
Hmm.
it's more of a risk going back and forth over a border than it is to stay here at night so they can go to work the next day. Yeah, we're employing them. It's not the immigrants' fault that a company employs illegal immigrants, right? It's
Right.
it's the country's fault for labeling them illegal immigrants.
Well, and it's the employer's fault for
Yeah,
wanting to do deals under the table. Because here's the reality is that if you allow them to be migrant workers, they have to pay their taxes just like
yep,
everybody else does. But when you are paying them under the table, you're the reason why they're not paying taxes.
that's right.
That's not
That's
that's
right.
not on them. That's on you for
That's
being a
right.
shady fuck. Now, we can have our discussion as to, what I think the government needs to do and in either collecting or not collecting taxes. That's a different principle altogether. But the idea that somehow they're taking our jobs and our benefits and not paying any taxes,
Right.
well, if you're hiring them under the table, that's kind of the way that it works. And
Yeah.
that's like being surprised that you're like, well, if I hit my hand with a hammer, it's going to hurt. So you put a hammer in your hand and you go, I wonder what this does. And you hit your hand with a
Well, and there's this other assumption that
self
that's
fulfilling prophecies.
it's based on the fact that if they weren't here, you would want the job that they are doing. And I don't think that's true in a lot of cases. I think
No,
if all the immigrants went back to the countries they came from and white people had to do those jobs, they'd be like, hell no, not for that salary. I'm not doing that. And that's
no,
the issue. You wouldn't do that for 70 hours a week for the rest of your life for the money that they're getting paid?
no, you would not. You absolutely would not. And that's the hilarity of it is that they don't want, these people don't want to take those jobs, and then they want to complain about them not paying taxes while they pay them under the table to avoid paying tax.
Right. And we see,
And then you're going to blame them for it. That's the hilarity of the situation is that
yeah.
they literally want to blame someone else for the exact shit that they're pulling. Projection much?
Right. Well, deflection. You're not paying attention to the real issue if you're
deflection
listening to us.
deflection is a form of projection.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They go together, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think people see immigrants make something of themselves and they don't like that. They say I've been working hard my whole life and look at this guy getting ahead. It's because he's working harder, because he's taking the jobs he's given, because he's not sitting on his ass in the basement waiting for the golden shoot to be handed to him, and he's not trying to become TikTok famous. He's saving his money. He's living in squalor. He's eating crap food so that he can send money back to where he came from so that he can build a life for himself here. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I think people have to realize that a lot of people just work hard for what they have. And that's how you get what you want is by working for it, not guessing at
Well,
it.
and the other thing too is that people like to complain about oh well they're just saving money and they're just sending it back to Mexico. That's partially true, maybe,
Nothing
yes,
wrong with that.
but also too they live in those communities. They work in those
Mm-hmm.
communities. That means they buy groceries in those communities. They pay rent in those communities.
Yeah,
They are actually doing something within that community that that money is staying in.
that's right. And
So
that's what's important.
the idea that they are literally just a drain is absolutely hilarious, because
Yeah,
that's not true in any regard. Like, all, whereas what are some of these people doing? They're literally hoarding as much money as they can to move somewhere else
yeah,
and spend their money there. It's like you're literally blaming them for the shit that you yourself are pulling, and you need to pull your head out of your ass
that's right.
and stop blaming these people for that. Yes, some of them are taking money and saving it and putting it in back to their families down in Central America,
Right.
but they are spending a vast majority of their money here in the States.
Hey, a lot of people in this country have a 401k, which is tax deferred, and you're putting it in there for your retirement, right? That's all that the people in Mexico are doing. They're sending money back to their country for land, for
Mhm.
a better life for their family, but eventually so they can retire. And I know to an immigrant that I've worked with and talked with, and I've worked in the industrial industry a long time and I've met
Mhm.
them. Would you rather have this same job in life here or back in your country of origin? And every single one of them said, I miss my country. I want to be home with my family. I just can't earn the money there. That's why I'm here earning the money for my family.
So, and then and that's the other thing is that all the things that they're doing benefit our infrastructure,
Yeah, but our
benefit us. That makes our food cheaper. That makes our roads
yeah.
run smoother. It makes our electricity more
Hmm.
efficient. It like the idea that they're literally just sucking things away from us is absolutely hilarious. But when we look at what China's doing with us,
We're doing the same thing.
that is exactly what's happening. They're
Yeah.
literally draining that stuff. Granted, we're getting something back. The reality is that we're getting more back from our migrant community
Yeah.
because they're living here, they're working here, they're spending their money here.
Yeah, and shortening the supply chain. Their money is going from here to the same hemisphere. If you scale that up to countries, you're absolutely right. We're giving money to China to do disastrous things to other countries. You
Now,
know?
that is the caveat in all of this is that I have no problem with the Chinese people. In fact, the Chinese cohorts that I went to school with were some of the coolest people that I got to hang out with.
Yeah,
My problem is with the Chinese government.
the
Just
government,
like my
yes.
problem is with the US government. I
Oh,
have a
mine
problem with
too.
government. And that is the issue at hand. Is I
Yes.
fundamentally have a problem with all these different governments. I have a problem with the Canadian government. I have a problem with the Mexican government. I have a problem with
Heck
the UK
yeah.
government. I have a problem with the EU. I have a problem with the UN. Fundamentally, I think my problem is just with authority.
And unless you have, if you have more than one person, then you're going to have a diversity in
Hmm.
that. So yeah, there is good people, there's bad people. That's cliche, but that's true. But good people are generally people that are prospering, and and people that are committing crimes often are the ones that are left out. And we have to remember that and create prosperity unilaterally, because people that
Hmm.
have jobs and insurance and family and love and support aren't out there just willy-nilly committing crimes of convenience. Some of
Right.
them are, because some of them are. There's a variety. There
Hmm.
is people that like to do things like that. But
Hmm.
generally, if you want to remove 95% of the crime, you need to create equality in prosperity.
I would have less of a problem with the Chinese government if you didn't have the Uyghur genocide happening,
Hmm.
if you didn't have these military incursions that are threatening global peace. I mean, I have a problem with us doing it too. I want to make that very clear. I think that the US is doing it just as often as Russia or China.
Hmm.
In fact, and that's another thing, Russia needs to knock it off too. We all need to knock it the fuck off. This idea that
Yeah.
we need to start beating each other up to show who's more powerful
Yeah.
is what we were basically doing in the 60s by pulling our dicks out and measuring it with, nuclear bombs.
Right.
This is no different. I thought it was stupid then, I think it's stupid now. Like what we need to be doing is racing to invest in world infrastructure. Like
Hmm.
we had the space race because science was cool. now we need to have the green race.
Yeah, we do. I love that idea.
I love the idea of being able to challenge Russia and China and India and the EU and Africa to say, I bet you America can do this better.
It's our market. Take
Show
it.
us, show us, and
Yep.
have it be a race to see who can make the most green energy.
Yes. And the thing is if you believe in green energy, it's a great idea. If you don't believe in it, then you have to respect the fact that we're creating a market out of thin air that can be a global moneymaker for the United States simply
Mm,
by creating a market. So
yep.
either way, going green makes sense. Even if you believe in it or don't, the economics of it is valid, is what I'm saying. And
Oh, absolutely.
I I wouldn't have a problem with governments if they said you can go where you want to go. If you don't believe in our ideals, you're free to go to another country. What I have an issue with is the fact that China says you have to stay here and you have to like what we do. I
And you
don't
have
like
to
that.
vote for the only party on the ticket.
Right.
I mean, granted, as a libertarian, I pretty much feel the same way. It's just that I have two parties to choose from that suck
Yeah.
instead of just one.
But I mean, North Korea, I would have no problem with North Korea being North Korea if they opened their border and said, if you don't want to be North Korean, go. And if you do, come on in. This is how we are. Like, I don't have a problem with Washington State saying, we're going to be the state of guns. You want a gun? You come here. And all the other states saying, okay, we're going to decide for ourselves. California saying, I don't want guns in my state. We're going to be the anti gun state. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is people being stuck in that,
Hmm.
and not given the option to choose.
Hmm. And I mean, I have a problem fundamentally with the fact that the limitations that states are putting on that versus the federal limitations on that, you know,
Hmm.
and it's not even the federal limitations. It's literally the Constitution that all the states are supposed to abide by.
Yeah.
Like for example, when it comes to economies, like if Washington, Oregon, California want to be democratic socialist because that's what they think is going to work, hey, by all means,
Do it.
y'all go for it. Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, they want to be as libertarian as possible and not have, any, hardly any government involvement. Great, go for it.
Right.
But the problem is that the amount of involvement that gets put in place, you ultimately see things get pushed underground. That's why if you decide to be as anti-gun as possible, the gun market's just going to get pushed underground.
Hmm. I agree.
It's kind of like how drugs, them being illegal, didn't make them go away. The drug market just got pushed underground. And as all of these states start to pass abortion laws,
Hmm.
abortion's not going to go away. It's just going to go underground.
Yeah, and it's going to end up being your privileged 16-year-old princess that's going into a back alley to get a coat hanger shoved in a vagina because she can't go to a decent doctor.
Or it'll be the governor's daughter being able to go
Yeah,
get an abortion because it's the governor's daughter, whereas your everyday average person is, well, unable to, because that's what government does. Government allows itself privileges that the ordinary man doesn't get.
yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, you saw it this week in the news with one of the senators. They got all their voting done. They got pulled over by the cops for speeding. She flashed her congressional pin. They were on their merry way.
I didn't see that, but I agree with it that that's how
That's
it
that
is.
is that is what happens with government, and why fundamentally I have issues with it. I would love to honestly know is if there was a black senator that got that, you know, hey, he gets pulled over by Capitol Police. Does he get to flash his congressional pin and just get to go? What
Sure,
about House reps?
sure,
Do black House reps get that privilege?
sure. Do they use it? Probably not. Probably scared to death. What I hate is the linear thought that abortion bad, illegal abortion. That's like immigration bad, make immigration illegal. It's so linear and it
Weed
just
bad, make weed illegal.
yeah, I just don't get that,
So
right?
then they're like, guns bad, make guns illegal. Now hold on.
Right. But here's the thing, and I'm going to say this because Full Metal Jacket taught me two lessons in life. And one was don't change. because the sergeant will beat you harder. Don't change your mind, you know? And the second one was the mistake of the single can often be the fault of the many. You know, Gomer sat there with a donut in his locker, and the drill sergeant found it, and he made everybody else do push-ups while Gomer ate that donut, right? And so, in a very military way, I think until you can regulate the people that have guns as gun owners, as if gun owners can't regulate other gun owners, you're going to have somebody trying to regulate them because you're killing people. And I'm sorry, it's like what I said to Joe, when a white person picks on a black person, he's not picking on you. That's your brother picking on a black person, and you should be embarrassed about that. And I feel the same way about guns. If somebody is killing people with a gun, it reflects poorly on you, and you got to fix it before somebody else does. And I'm
But
asking gun owners to fix it. Come to a consensus, get together as a group, and come up with an amendment to the Constitution that would favor everything that we need.
and that's what I've told people is that, the problem that we have if we don't fix it as gun owners, somebody's going to fix it for us and we ain't going to get much of a say in it.
Right.
And that's where
That's right.
reality is not going to sit there right now because currently you don't have enough people to force a constitutional amendment. You don't have enough.
But you need to start building towards it. you
Oh, I guarantee you
you gotta do something.
there are people that are building towards it, and I do
Good.
think that at some point, what's going to end up happening is that the left is going to get enough people to force a change, and the right's going to throw a fit.
Well, they are. They've already proposed it. They've already proposed it. It's going through, and that's what I'm talking about. But we're stuck on voting rights, so we're never going to discuss this other bill that they're gonna get rid of the filibuster to move voting rights, and then suddenly find it convenient to still use that for gun rights, and that's the scary thing. But
Oh yeah.
again, if you're not regulating yourself, look, I love smoking weed. The problem is weed is illegal because some doofus 15-year-old said, "Oh, weed made me kill someone." And that's the problem. you know, like
Yeah, and
you
some other moron was like, weed is good, and I like
right.
PCP, so weed and PCP is great.
Right, and that's the problem is that the stereotypes that are built around the actual thing is bigger than the thing itself. Yeah, racism, people are racist. Why? Because they never had to sit in a fucking house with five black people for a month. Just do it, and you will realize you don't have any racist bone in your body. They're awesome people, but the fact that you don't know them and you're being told what they are makes you scared of them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's about everything. Ilhan Omar is my favorite person on the planet, but that's because I choose to learn about her before she's in my face, right?
Right. You know, and that's just it is that I see a bunch of people who are I see a bunch of people who want to yell sheep, but all they do is toe their party line.
Yeah.
And they don't buck their party line because if they do, they'll get slaughtered like fucking sheep.
I'm saying build a policy within your party line that benefits people. You can't just be against something forever, or somebody will be for something. And what that for
Mhm.
thing is, that's the problem I have with Democrats, is because Republicans aren't offering me another option. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And that's my problem. I have no other option but Joe Biden because he's the sane one in the room. And when I look around the landscape, I think to myself, is there another politician that can take over Joe Biden's place once Joe Biden is gone that won't destroy the world? And I don't see one on either side. I don't see a
Mhm.
I don't see the candidate in 2024 not being radically opposed to 75 85% of what I believe in.
And that's the reality is that as you get these louder, more radical voices, that's what our choices are going to be.
Yeah, that sucks, right? I mean, when you're hoping for Bernie Sanders, when 10 years ago you were like, hell no, Bernie Sanders, you know?
Yeah, Bernie Sanders is going to be the sane one in the room,
Right. When Elizabeth Warren is the calm, cool, and collected one, you have a problem, you know?
But that's just it is that we're going to see the rise of louder voices. That's already becoming clear,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. But but
and
but only
but
because people are egging you on to hate the other side because your money falls out. Fox
mhm,
News does what they do. Look, Fox News said in court and on the record that no intelligent person would ever consider what they said the truth. They said it in court, and you can go look that up. But they're saying what they're
Mhm.
saying simply because your money falls out of your pockets
Yeah, I
every
mean,
time they do.
even the one of Trump's lawyers who pushed the conspiracy theories just
Sidney Powell,
posited,
yeah.
yeah, she just posited the same thing, and that no reasonable person would believe that her election fraud claims were real. And I'm going,
Right,
so you want to scream it at the top of your lungs, but then claim that no reason. So what you're
right.
doing is you're gaslighting your own party, saying that they're not reasonable.
That's right, but it turns Fox News into a series of The Simpsons,
Right?
right? Like, don't take you're not living your life based on the philosophies of Family Guy, right? So you
Right.
shouldn't be doing it in the fictional entertainment industry of Fox News.
But that's where we are. Is
That's
that
where we are.
these sensationalist things sell eyeballs, and they're
Mhm.
good at selling eyeballs, and that sells ad money. So
Yeah.
rather than actually selling news, they sell things, and then when they finally get sued, do the whole, well, no reasonable person would. Okay,
Right.
well, if you call yourself news, what you're expecting is that there are people that will reasonably take what you say
Yeah,
as truth.
but we're not news. We just say we're news, but we're not
There,
news. We call ourselves Fox News, but we're actually an entertainment corporation.
and that's what's funny.
It's like Mad TV, right? Or Mad
The Onion.
Magazine. Mad Magazine was a magazine, but you shouldn't take it seriously.
Right. Or The Onion, and
Yep.
how many people but the thing was is that The
Right.
Onion was so weird and over the top that once upon a time there was no way that you could take it seriously, and every
Right.
once in a while people would get busted by them.
Hmm.
And now, and then for a while there people started finding The Onion, they thought it was actually news because
Right.
the news was just that crazy.
And that's the problem we have is this somebody said it that we've leveled the media landscape, the information landscape, and now we're disproportionately benefiting misinformation because it's easier to
Mhm.
create and there's less regulation on it.
Yep.
Anybody can say fire, but it takes a real news organization to confirm it. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, even South Park managed to make fun of it and said, in that one episode, it's like, and we're reporting cases of
Yep.
looting, murder, and rape. Oh my God, there are
The-
people actually raping each other? No, no, no,
No,
we haven't
no.
seen it. We're just
We're,
reporting
we're
it.
just reporting it. Yeah, I just watched that episode. That's fucking hilarious.
And
But we,
that's what it's become is that you have 5 minutes of maybe facts
mhm.
and 55 minutes of people spouting their opinions on it.
Yeah, that's my problem. That's why we're a full 2 hours of spouting opinions.
Exactly.
But hey, that's the thing is I'm never telling anybody this is what they have to think. I'm always asking people if I'm right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Is Judaism a religion or is it a race? It could be both. Half religion. Thank you for helping me with that. You know what I mean?
You
It's
know,
not like I hate Jews because they're a race.
right. And the reality is that, even with as much as I know, there are still places where it's like I have to step back and say, you know, I could talk on it, but I don't
Mhm.
know enough to actually foster good thought and good conversation
Right.
without having someone else that would actually know. I mean,
Yep.
I consider myself incredibly blessed to be able to know and understand the things that I do and
Right.
have the capacity to learn things insanely quickly. But even still, there is a line that you can't cross because you'll just be issuing conjecture, and that doesn't do
Yeah.
anything to help
Mm-mm.
solve problems.
I agree. I agree. But we have to get past the getting mad first. Like, what did you say? I'm mad. Wait, how do I defend that? We have to get
Right,
past that, and we have to just
right,
realize that some people have their own opinions and they share them way too much. But they're sharing them because you're reacting to them, and if you don't react to them, they'll just share them with the people that do.
exactly.
I love it. So we have been doing this every week. Do you know this? So I'm going to ask you. We've done action and we've done horror.
Mhm.
I need another movie from you in a different genre, I guess.
Mm. Ooh.
I know. It's almost like recommendations, by the way.
Anime,
Ooh, okay.
because I do like good anime.
I don't have a
Um,
favorite anime movie. Honest to God, I don't know any.
I strongly recommend you check out Hayao Miyazaki movies. Then
Okay.
um, some of the good ones are Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh, that's a movie? Because I watched that.
Yeah,
I watched that. I thought it was a series.
nope,
Holy
it's a
cow.
movie.
Okay.
Uh, Castle in the Sky is great. Princess Mononoke is always a good choice. Um, Kiki's Delivery Service is fantastic. But I'm gonna have to go with Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
It is an absolutely fantastic anime. It's so wholesome, so good.
That changes everything. I thought it was just the longest episode ever, but it wasn't. It was a movie.
Yeah,
I
there's
love
even a
that.
book. So,
Hey, I watched Rabbit Hole on HBO Max, and it
mm,
is the story of QAnon. It, I mean, I think it's still an ongoing series, but yeah, it explains a lot of it, and just
mm,
I don't know if it explains a lot. It talks mainly about the guys that created image boards and,
mm,
8chan and 4chan and that, the battle between all the chans and how a chan
mm,
was called a chan. And so it was interesting to me. Nobody really cares in the Q support community. Nobody really cares about Q. It's just another person saying stupid things like any of the 7 billion people of us. Why are we focused on this guy Q? I feel like going, this is a J drop, you know?
right.
So, but I still recommend watching it. Just, I mean, I was nervous that my mind was going to be like I'd hear something and go, "Oh my God, Q is right." And there was a lot of, well, Q predicted this, like Q predicted this. But there's also, hey, guess what? Q predicted a bunch of stuff that you didn't even take seriously. So,
Mm.
yeah,
Well, I suppose, man.
I know, right? Okay, how's Moving Castle? I love it.
Howl's Moving Castle.
I love you, Jeffrey.
Love you too.
I
We will
think that's
catch.
it. Do you have
We,
anything else?
I don't.
Okay. Well, go check us out on Amazon Music and Audible, by the way. I don't know if I told you, we moved to Red Circle. I started the conversation off before you got here saying we moved to Red Circle because SoundCloud wasn't the best fit for us anymore. And we have a chance to make money and get more attention. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully, we're going to have some better analytics for Jeffrey to go through and look at. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I went to Spotify. We signed up for Spotify like 3 months ago, and I
Mm,
was like, they made me go there to change something, to redirect my hosting, and I was like, what are my stats on there? And we had like thousands and thousands of listens on Spotify, but it never reported to SoundCloud. So I never knew that Spotify should be promoted more because we didn't have those stats, but now we will on our new um,
nice.
platform. So I'm excited how you work the stats. I don't know how stats are going to make us better, but I do know that I need people's support because once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can start creating video podcasts, and I really want to create video podcasts.
Nice.
I know. I'm so excited. I love you, Jeffrey. Go get some rest. Thanks for getting
Love
the
you too.
vaccine.
You too, man. We'll catch you later.
Yay! Love you. Bye. Yay! And there it is. Boom. Oh, hey. Thank you for listening to the Public Access America live stream. That went pretty well, I think. I hope you're having a great day. If you have any comments or questions, please. I didn't even check the chat. I'll tell you, we are on our like fifth chat, and I don't think I have any questions ever. Ah, hi Daisy, I didn't notice. I'm so sorry. We got our first comment. I love you, Daisy. I will always remember you, Daisy, because you are our first comment on our live streams. I appreciate you. If you have any comments or suggestions on how to do this better, let us know. Yay. Hey, check out Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. We have a live stream coming up Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and that's it.